What if a child who once served tea at a railway station grew up to lead one of the world's largest democracies? This isn't a fable or a fantasy. It's the real story of Narendra Modi, a man who began his life in obscurity and rose to stand on the global stage as India's Prime Minister. Born on September 17, 1950, in the dusty town of Vadnagar in the Indian state of Gujarat, Narendra Modi's world was simple, modest, and marked by struggle. He was the third of 6 children in a lower middle-class family. His father, Demonetization Modi, ran a small tea stall near the local railway station. Life was far from easy. There were no silver spoons, no promises of political power, no polished halls of privilege. As a young boy, Narendra would wake up early, help his father prepare and serve tea, and then head off to school. He balanced work with study, sometimes missing out on what other children took for granted, a carefree childhood filled with play. But even then, there was something different about him. He was observant, quiet, and deeply curious about the world beyond his town. He didn't grow up with luxuries, but he did grow up with discipline. That discipline, shaped by his family's struggle, became a pillar of his character. Modi's early days were not about politics. They were about survival, service, and learning to listen. He watched how people moved through life with both dignity and difficulty. He saw injustice, but he also saw resilience. His mother, Hiraben, played a powerful role in shaping his values. Despite limited education, she instilled in her children the importance of honesty, hard work, and self-respect. Even as a child, Narendra was drawn to stories of heroes, warriors, and saints. He would read anything he could get his hands on, especially tales that spoke of sacrifice and service. In school, he wasn't the top of the class, but he was deeply involved. He loved acting in plays, especially those about patriotism and history. Friends remember him as someone who didn't crave attention, but someone who was always watching, always thinking. After school, he would often wander, visiting local temples, sitting near the pond, or simply walking the railway tracks, dreaming of a life that felt bigger than the one he knew. Even then, the desire to serve and lead was quietly growing inside him, though he could not yet see where it would lead. As he moved into his teenage years, Modi's curiosity began to stretch beyond his town. He wanted to understand India, its people, its religions, its contradictions. He joined the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or RSS, a Hindu nationalist volunteer organization. Through them, he learned discipline, physical training, and a new kind of purpose. This was where his political thinking began to take shape. The RSS taught him about India's history, culture, and what they believed it needed to reclaim. It also taught him structure, early morning drills, uniforms, and long hours of volunteer work. While others his age were chasing personal comfort or careers, Modi was immersing himself in the idea of national service. He would sometimes disappear for days or weeks, traveling to villages, participating in training camps, and working on small-scale service projects. He began to believe that change could come from the ground up, not through wealth or force, but through character and commitment. Eventually, he left home altogether. Without much notice, he embarked on a journey across India. He visited the Himalayas, wandered to ashrams and temples, met with sages, and lived simply. These travels were not about tourism. They were about seeking, understanding, and surrendering. He slept on floors, ate what was given, and asked questions everywhere he went. For 2 years, he lived like this, far from his family, without money, without title. When he returned to Gujarat, he was not the same boy who had left. He was more focused, more serious, and more ready to act. Modi reconnected with the RSS and began working full-time as a pracharak, or campaign worker. He was assigned small responsibilities at first, organizing events, distributing pamphlets, and mentoring young members. But he was tireless. People began to notice his energy, his memory, and his ability to speak clearly and passionately. He wasn't flashy or loud, but he was committed. He didn't look for credit, he looked for results. In dusty offices and village meetings, he earned trust, not by power but by presence. He traveled constantly, lived simply, and remained unmarried, choosing to dedicate his life to his mission. There were no shortcuts, no headlines, only slow, steady steps. That is how the story of Narendra Modi began, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows, where persistence and purpose were his only guides. He was still far from power, but already walking toward it, one step at a time. As Narendra Modi continued his quiet rise through the ranks of the RSS, the lessons he had learned in his youth only deepened. He had already embraced a life of discipline and sacrifice, but now his actions were guided by a sharper sense of strategy and service. In the 1970s and 80s, India was going through political turmoil. The emergency declared by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1975 shocked the country. Civil liberties were suspended. Political opponents were jailed. Newspapers were censored. Modi, working as an underground activist during the emergency, took on the dangerous task of organizing resistance and spreading information. He disguised himself, moved secretly between towns, and coordinated with opposition leaders. It was a time that tested his courage and sharpened his political instincts. Though he wasn't yet a public figure, those who worked with him began to see his reliability. He didn't panic. He planned. When the emergency ended in 1977, Modi emerged more committed than ever to the idea that India needed strong leadership rooted in discipline and national pride. His work with the RSS continued, and he took on more responsibilities. He became known for his ability to manage both people and crises. He wasn't flashy. He didn't seek the spotlight. But when there was a difficult job to be done, organizing, motivating, resolving conflict, Modi often took the lead. By the late 1980s, he had become one of the most effective organizers in Gujarat. The RSS saw this, and so did the Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP. The BJP was growing as a political force, and they needed skilled leaders who understood grassroots organization. Modi was invited to work with the party and soon became a key strategist. His skills were now being used on a national political stage. He traveled constantly, building the party's presence in Gujarat and beyond. He managed election campaigns, organized rallies, and strengthened networks of volunteers. He understood the power of connection, that people wanted to be heard, and that even the smallest local issue could shape the bigger picture. Modi's rise within the BJP was not based on wealth or family ties. It came from results. He was a man who got things done, quietly, consistently. Over time, his role expanded. He worked closely with national leaders, learned from senior politicians, and helped shape the BJP's message. But he still remained grounded. He still lived simply, carried his own bags, and avoided luxury. He wasn't building a brand, he was building trust. By the late 1990s, Gujarat was becoming a central battleground in Indian politics. The BJP wanted strong leadership in the state, and Modi was being considered. Then, in 2001, a natural disaster changed everything. A massive earthquake struck Gujarat, devastating thousands of homes and lives. The state was in crisis. At that moment, the BJP decided to make a bold move. They appointed Narendra Modi as the new chief minister of Gujarat. It was a surprising choice. Modi had never held elected office. He had no experience as a public administrator, but those who knew him believed in his ability to lead. In October 2001, Modi took the oath of office. He walked into a broken state, both physically and politically. People were angry, hurt, and in desperate need of leadership. Modi wasted no time. He focused on relief efforts, rebuilding infrastructure, and restoring hope. He demanded accountability from officials, cut red tape, and worked long hours. He visited the affected areas personally, met with families, and listened to their needs. He wasn't just acting like a leader. He was becoming one. This moment marked a turning point in his life. Modi, the campaign worker and organizer, was now Narendra Modi, the chief minister. He had stepped into power not through charisma or campaign promises, but through action. And Gujarat, in its time of pain, had just met the man who would lead it into a new era. Narendra Modi's tenure as chief minister of Gujarat began under the shadow of disaster, but it soon transformed into a defining period of development and controversy. As he settled into his new role, Modi made it clear that he would lead with discipline, speed, and results. He prioritized rebuilding after the 2001 earthquake, not just homes, but trust. Within months, his government had launched rehabilitation efforts, fast-tracked infrastructure projects, and attracted investments to the region. His reputation for efficiency began to grow. Modi implemented bold economic policies. He encouraged industrial growth, improved roads and electricity, and made Gujarat a preferred destination for business. He embraced technology, setting up online systems for government services and increasing transparency. To many, it looked like Gujarat was changing rapidly, and for the better. Business leaders praised his governance. Investors lined up for the state's annual Vibrant Gujarat Summit. Headlines began to refer to him as a pro-growth, no-nonsense leader. But 2002 would test everything. In February that year, a train carrying Hindu pilgrims was attacked in Godhra, leading to the deaths of dozens. What followed was one of the darkest chapters in Gujarat's history: communal riots that left hundreds dead and many more displaced. The violence shook the nation. Modi's government was heavily criticized for its handling of the situation. Accusations of inaction and bias followed him for years. Some believed he could have done more to prevent the riots. Others saw him as a scapegoat for deeper social tensions. National and international scrutiny intensified. Human rights groups condemned the violence. Courts ordered investigations. Political rivals demanded his resignation. Modi, however, remained defiant. He denied wrongdoing and said his government had done everything it could to control the situation. Over time, multiple legal inquiries examined his role. Eventually, India's Supreme Court-appointed investigation cleared him of direct involvement. The controversy did not disappear, but neither did Modi. In fact, he used the period that followed to refocus. He doubled down on development. He launched new policies to boost manufacturing, agriculture, and energy. He introduced the Jayatigram Yojana to bring 24-hour electricity to rural areas. He built highways, improved ports, and pushed water conservation. His image slowly shifted from a leader surrounded by controversy to a leader associated with growth. Modi also mastered the art of public communication. He connected directly with people through town halls, speeches, and even radio. He crafted a narrative of self-made success, the son of a tea seller now building a modern, vibrant state. Gujarat began to be called the Gujarat model, a vision of fast-track development, clean governance, and strong leadership. Critics continued to raise concerns about inequality, minority rights, and media control. Supporters pointed to data, GDP growth, increased investment, and rising infrastructure. Modi kept winning elections. In 2007 and again in 2012, he returned as chief minister with strong mandates. He positioned himself not just as a state leader, but as someone capable of transforming the entire country. By the end of his third term, it was clear: Narendra Modi was not done. His ambitions were growing, and the next chapter of his life would take him far beyond Gujarat, to the highest office in India. By the early 2010s, Narendra Modi was no longer just a regional leader. He had become a national figure. His supporters viewed him as a man of action, someone who could cut through red tape and bring results. India was at a crossroads. The central government faced growing criticism over corruption scandals, slow economic growth, and policy paralysis. Many Indians were losing faith in traditional leadership. At this moment, Modi's narrative stood in contrast. His rise from poverty, his record of development in Gujarat, and his image as a strong, decisive administrator began to gain traction across the country. Within the Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, there were debates about who would lead the party into the next general election. Several names were considered, but Modi's popularity with the grassroots and among younger voters pushed him ahead. In 2013, the BJP formally announced Narendra Modi as their candidate for Prime Minister in the 2014 general elections. It was a bold move. For the first time, a political campaign was built around one individual's image rather than a party platform. Modi's campaign was unlike anything India had seen before. It was massive, digital-savvy, and emotionally charged. He crisscrossed the country, holding thousands of rallies, speaking to millions. His message was simple and powerful: development, governance, and pride in India. The campaign used slogans like Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, meaning together with all, development for all. He portrayed himself as a self-made leader who understood the dreams of the common man. He positioned himself as an outsider to Delhi's political elite, someone who would clean up the system and energize the economy. The campaign embraced technology. Social media, 3D holograms, mobile vans, and digital outreach became key tools. Modi's image, folded hands, determined expression, and powerful speeches became instantly recognizable across India. Critics raised concerns about his past, his party's ideology, and the tone of his messaging. Supporters saw a man who could bring change. The 2014 election became a national moment. Voter turnout was high. The atmosphere felt electric. When results came in, the verdict was clear. The BJP, under Modi's leadership, had won a majority on its own, something no party had done in India for 3 decades. Narendra Modi was now the Prime Minister of India. The tea seller from Vadnagar had become the head of the world's largest democracy. His journey was unprecedented. It showed how charisma, communication, and strategy could combine to shift a nation's politics. From the swearing-in ceremony to his first days in office, Modi made symbolic and strategic moves. He invited leaders from neighboring countries. He emphasized cleanliness and simplicity. He launched the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, a national cleanliness campaign, and urged citizens to participate. He spoke directly to the public through a new radio show called Man Ki Baat. Modi's first year in office set the tone for his leadership, visible, energetic, and often bypassing traditional media. He launched initiatives like Make in India, Digital India, and Jan Dhan Yojana to increase manufacturing, bring technology to the people, and expand financial access. The international stage also noticed. Modi traveled widely, meeting world leaders, addressing Indian communities abroad, and building new alliances. In just a few months, he went from Gujarat's chief minister to a global statesman. It was clear. Narendra Modi wasn't just leading India. He was redefining what Indian leadership looked like in the modern world. Narendra Modi's first term as prime minister was marked by sweeping changes, bold policies, and a leadership style that emphasized visibility and control. But as the 2019 elections approached, the question loomed. Could he hold on to the momentum? His government had launched a wide range of programs, from economic reforms to infrastructure development, health care, and digitization. The Goods and Services Tax, GST, unified India's complex tax system. The Ujjwala Yojana brought clean cooking fuel to rural homes. The Jan Dhan accounts helped bring millions into the banking system. Modi emphasized that his government worked for the poor, the farmers, and the common citizen. He spoke often about national pride, self-reliance, and a corruption-free India. Yet challenges remained. The economy faced periods of slowdown. Unemployment became a point of criticism. And the sudden demonetization move in 2016, where high-value currency notes were banned overnight, sparked both praise and backlash. Modi defended the move as a strike against black money and fake currency. Critics called it disruptive and poorly planned. Despite controversies, Modi maintained strong approval ratings. He continued to travel extensively, both across India and abroad, projecting India as a rising power. He developed close ties with world leaders and used diplomacy to attract investment and attention. As the 2019 election neared, the Modi government faced a new challenge: how to secure a second term in a political landscape that was shifting again. The Pulwama terror attack in February 2019 killed dozens of Indian soldiers and shook the nation. In response, the Indian Air Force carried out a strike in Balakot, Pakistan. The government claimed it had hit terrorist camps. The opposition demanded proof. But in the eyes of many voters, Modi had shown strength. His image as a decisive, tough leader was reinforced. His campaign focused again on nationalism, development, and strong leadership. The BJP's message was clear: stability with Modi or chaos with the opposition. In May 2019, the results were announced. The BJP didn't just win, it won bigger. Narendra Modi secured a second term with an even larger mandate than in 2014. It was a rare political achievement in India's recent history, and it confirmed Modi's status as the country's most dominant leader in decades. In his second term, Modi wasted no time in pushing forward bold and controversial decisions. The government revoked Article 370, which had granted special status to Jammu and Kashmir, a long-standing goal of the BJP. The state was split and reorganized under tighter central control. Supporters called it historic. Critics raised concerns over military presence, internet shutdowns, and the erosion of democratic processes. Next came the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, which offered fast-track citizenship to non-Muslim refugees from neighboring countries. This sparked nationwide protests. Demonstrations erupted across campuses and cities. The government defended the law, while opponents called it discriminatory and divisive. Through all of this, Modi remained firm in his messaging. He framed every move as part of a greater mission to strengthen India and protect its future. Then came the unexpected, the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, Modi announced a nationwide lockdown with just a few hours' notice. India shut down completely. The move was one of the strictest in the world and was praised for quick action, but it also brought hardship. Millions of migrant workers lost jobs and began walking home. The scenes of people walking hundreds of kilometers to reach their villages became a symbol of the lockdown's human cost. Still, Modi remained the central figure in managing the crisis. He addressed the nation frequently, urged calm, and promoted health campaigns like Mask Up India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, a call for self-reliance. India's vaccine rollout became one of the largest in the world, and despite ups and downs, it restored some normalcy. As his second term progressed, Modi's leadership was again at the center of debate. He was praised for his boldness and vision, but criticized for being too centralized and controlling. He was admired for his ability to connect with the public, yet accused of sidelining institutions. But one thing remained constant. Narendra Modi continued to dominate India's political landscape. He had redefined the role of Prime Minister, not just as a head of government, but as a brand, a messenger, and a movement. As Narendra Modi moved deeper into his second term, his influence on India became even more pronounced. He was no longer just a political leader. He had become a symbol of a new era. His government continued pushing large-scale reforms and launching ambitious national campaigns. Digital India grew stronger. Clean energy investments expanded. Infrastructure projects reshaped highways, railways, and airports. He focused on creating a self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, encouraging local manufacturing, entrepreneurship, and reduced dependence on imports. Under his leadership, India saw increased defense spending, new global trade partnerships, and strong foreign policy moves. His outreach to leaders in the US, Europe, and Asia signaled India's rising role on the global stage. At home, however, divisions deepened. Modi's supporters saw him as a decisive visionary, modernizing India and restoring national pride. His critics warned of growing authoritarianism, media pressure, and social polarization. The media landscape changed. Several mainstream outlets were accused of favoring the government. Journalists who criticized the administration faced increasing pressure. Despite the criticism, Modi maintained strong approval ratings. His connection with the public remained powerful. He used platforms like Man Ki Baat to speak directly to citizens, reinforcing his message of unity, discipline, and national duty. Culturally, Modi promoted India's ancient traditions, yoga, and spirituality on global stages. He highlighted heritage while pushing modernization. His approach to governance remained centralized. Decision-making became more streamlined, but less consultative. Even state governments increasingly looked to Delhi for direction. Internationally, Modi gained recognition as a powerful orator and strategic partner. He represented India at key summits and was seen as a key player in shaping 21st-century geopolitics. Domestically, he oversaw a mix of economic achievements and contentious political reforms. The Agnipath scheme for military recruitment sparked debate. Farm laws introduced to modernize agriculture faced massive protests and were eventually repealed. In every move, Modi's leadership style was evident, bold, unapologetic, and calculated. He continued shaping the BJP's future, mentoring new leaders while ensuring the party remained aligned with his vision. By the time India approached the next election cycle, one truth was clear. Modi had left an indelible mark on the country's institutions, politics, and public life. His journey from selling tea to leading a nation of over 1 billion had become a symbol of ambition, discipline, and relentless drive. He changed how political campaigns were run, how leaders communicated, and how the idea of governance was perceived. To some, he is a hero who gave India strength and global voice. To others, he is a controversial figure who reshaped democracy in ways that demand scrutiny. But whether you agree with him or not, Narendra Modi's story is impossible to ignore. He redefined what it means to rise, lead, and shape a nation's identity, not just for a term, but for a generation. Narendra Modi's story is not just about politics. It's about transformation of a man, a movement, and a nation. From a small-town tea seller to one of the most powerful voices on the world stage, his journey has inspired, challenged, and changed India in ways few could have imagined. Whether you admire his rise or question his methods, one thing is undeniable: his impact is historic. He didn't follow the path, he created his own. And in doing so, he showed millions what discipline, vision, and relentless ambition can achieve. Thank you for joining us in exploring this extraordinary life. If this story sparked reflection or conversation, tell us, what part of Narendra Modi's journey surprised or inspired you the most? Leave a comment and let's continue the conversation below. And remember, every great story begins with a choice, a first step, a belief that change is possible no matter where you begin.